The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Aurelia, turning the city lights outside into bleeding watercolors of amber and red. I pressed my palm against the cold glass, watching droplets race downward like tears I couldn't afford to shed. My reflection stared back, hollow cheeks, dark circles beneath green eyes that once sparkled with dreams now long extinguished. The black dress I wore, borrowed from my roommate Clara, hung loose on my frame. 3 months of rationing meals to pay rent had carved away any softness I once possessed. "Table 7 needs water," Marcus, the floor manager, snapped as he breezed past, not bothering to look at me. I was invisible here, just another struggling waitress in a city that chewed up girls like me and spat them out without ceremony. I grabbed the crystal pitcher, its weight familiar in my trembling hands. The restaurant hummed with quiet conversations, the clink of silverware against fine china, the occasional burst of laughter from patrons who'd never known what it meant to choose between electricity and groceries. Aurelia catered to a specific clientele: politicians, old money families, and people whose names you didn't speak above a whisper. Table 7 sat in the corner booth, partially hidden behind an ornate silk screen painted with golden phoenixes. I'd been told to stay away from that section tonight. "Reserved for someone important," Marcus had said, his voice tight with nervousness I'd never heard before. But water was water, and tips were tips. I rounded the screen, my worn heels clicking against marble floors, and froze. The booth was empty except for one man. He sat with his back to the wall, exactly the kind of positioning that sent prickles down my spine, even before I registered anything else about him. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from stone. Sharp jaw, high cheekbones, lips pressed into a line that suggested he smiled rarely, if ever. He couldn't have been older than 32, maybe 33. But something ancient lived behind those eyes. Coal-black eyes that found mine the moment I appeared, pinning me in place like a butterfly to a board. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my yearly rent. Crisp white shirt open at the collar, revealing a glimpse of ink that disappeared beneath the fabric. A Patek Philippe watch caught the light at his wrist. Everything about him screamed power, money, danger. 2 men flanked the booth's entrance, massive, silent, their hands clasped in front of them in that universal stance of hired muscle. They hadn't been there when I started my approach. How had I missed them? I'm sorry, I stammered, already backing away. I didn't know... Water. His voice cut through my panic, smooth as aged whiskey, but cold enough to freeze. He didn't ask. Simply stated it like facts were his native language. "You brought it. Pour it." My hands shook as I stepped forward. The 2 guards watched me with the intensity of predators assessing potential threat. I was 5'4", and probably weighed 110 pounds soaking wet. Threat level, 0. Still, they watched. I leaned forward to fill his glass, hyper-aware of how close I had to get, how the borrowed dress dipped lower than I'd realized when I bent down. The scent of him hit me, expensive cologne, something woody and dark with undertones of leather and smoke. Beneath it, something else. Gunpowder? My imagination had to be running wild. The water splashed into the crystal, too loud in the sudden silence. A droplet escaped, landing on the pristine white tablecloth. I watched it spread, horrified, as the man's gaze followed the water's path. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, grabbing for the napkin to blot the stain. "I'll get you a new..." His hand caught my wrist, not roughly, almost gently. But the grip was steel, stopping me mid-motion. Heat radiated from his palm, burning through my skin despite the ice in his demeanor. I looked up, trapped, and found him studying my face like I was a puzzle he intended to solve through sheer force of will. "You're shaking," he observed, his thumb pressing against my pulse point where it hammered frantically. "Why?" Nervous, I managed. "This section is... off limits?" The corner of his mouth lifted in something that wasn't quite a smile. "And yet, here you are. Marcus said Table 7 needed water. I didn't know..." I tried to pull back. His grip tightened infinitesimally, just enough to remind me I wasn't going anywhere until he decided to let me go. "What's your name?" He released me as suddenly as he'd grabbed me, Leaving my wrist burning where he'd touched, I stumbled back a step, cradling my arm against my chest. Emma Hartley. Emma. He tasted my name like expensive wine, rolling it around before deciding whether to swallow or spit. You work here long? 4 months. Why was I answering? Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my feet stayed planted, roots digging into marble. I should go. Your guest. There is no guest. He leaned back, and the movement revealed the gun holstered beneath his jacket. My breath caught. He noticed, of course he noticed, and his expression darkened with something almost like amusement. I'm dining alone tonight. Sit. It wasn't a request. I can't. I'm working, I'll lose my job. Sit. Down. 2 words that carried the weight of absolute authority. The kind of voice that had ordered worse things than a waitress to take a seat. I sat. The leather booth creaked beneath me, expensive and butter soft. This close, I could see the details I'd missed from a distance, the small scar cutting through his left eyebrow, the shadow of stubble along his jaw, the way his eyes tracked every tiny movement I made, cataloging, memorizing. You're afraid of me, he stated. Should I be? Yes. No hesitation, no false comfort, just brutal honesty that made my stomach clench. But not tonight. Tonight you're safe. That's not particularly reassuring, I heard myself say, and immediately wanted to swallow the words back. You didn't sass men who wore guns to dinner. But he laughed, actually laughed, a low rumble that transformed his face from intimidating to devastating. No, I suppose it isn't. He gestured to one of the guards, a subtle movement of 2 fingers. Bring menus. 2. Really, I can't. When did you last eat? He cut me off, those black eyes seeing too much, reading the truth written in my gaunt cheeks and the way my uniform hung loose. A real meal. Not whatever scraps you steal from the kitchen when no one's watching. Heat flooded my face. Don't lie to me, Emma. The temperature in his voice dropped 20 degrees. I can have you fired with a single phone call. Or I can feed you. Choose. It shouldn't have been a choice. Pride should have made me stand up, walk away. Consequences be damned, but pride didn't fill empty stomachs or pay rent. And I'd learned years ago that survival mattered more than dignity. Why? I asked instead, hating how small my voice sounded. Because I want to. He accepted the menus from the guard without looking away from me. That's reason enough. We ordered. Or rather, he ordered. Things I couldn't pronounce. Dishes that probably cost more than my weekly paycheck. I should have protested. Should have asked for something cheap, but the words died in my throat every time I tried to speak them. He orchestrated everything with the casual confidence of someone accustomed to having the world rearrange itself to his preferences. The food arrived. Seared scallops that melted on my tongue. Risotto so creamy I nearly wept. Beef that dissolved like butter. I tried to eat slowly, to maintain some semblance of composure, but hunger won. I devoured everything, and he watched with an intensity that should have made me uncomfortable, but instead felt almost protective? No, that was insane. Men like him weren't protective. They were dangerous. Better? He asked when I finally set down my fork, the question surprisingly gentle. Yes. Thank you. I meant it. I should probably... You're not going anywhere. He checked his watch, a casual gesture that somehow felt threatening. Your shift ends in 20 minutes. You'll wait here until then. How do you... I know everything about this restaurant, Emma, including your schedule, your bus route home, and the fact that you walk 3 blocks alone in the dark because you can't afford the fare all the way to your apartment. His expression hardened. That ends tonight. Fear spiked through the pleasant fullness in my stomach. What do you mean? I mean you'll accept a ride home. My driver will take you. I don't even know you. The protest sounded weak even to my own ears. Dante Moretti. He extended his hand across the table, a formal gesture that felt absurd given the circumstances. Now you know me. I stared at his outstretched hand. Dante Moretti. The name rang bells, distant alarm bells I couldn't quite place. Something I'd heard in whispered conversations, in news reports I'd half listened to while serving coffee at my morning diner job. Moretti. Oh God. The realization must have shown on my face because his expression shifted. That dangerous amusement returning. "You've heard of me." It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. The Moretti family controlled half the city's underground. Drugs, weapons, protection rackets. They were the boogeyman parents invoked to scare children into staying away from dark alleys. And their youngest Don, the one who'd taken control after his father's death 3 years ago, was notorious for being twice as ruthless and 10 times more clever than the old guard. That man sat across from me, waiting for my reaction. "I should go," I whispered, sliding toward the edge of the booth. His hand caught mine on the table, large and warm, completely engulfing my smaller fingers. "Emma, breathe." I hadn't realized I'd stopped. Air rushed back into my lungs in a painful gasp. "Look at me." I did, helpless against the command in his voice. "I told you that you're safe tonight. I don't break my word. Ever. Do you understand?" "Why me?" The question burst out before I could stop it. "Why am I sitting here? Why are you—" "Because the moment you walked around that screen, scared and shaking, trying so damn hard to be invisible, I knew." His thumb stroked across my knuckles, an absent gesture that sent electricity racing up my arm. "I knew you were going to change everything." "That's crazy," I breathed. "Yes," he agreed. "It is." Marcus appeared at the edge of our booth, his face pale and sweating despite the restaurant's perfect climate control. "Mr. Moretti, sir, I apologize for the interruption. The check." Dante didn't release my hand, didn't look away from my face. "And inform management that Miss Hartley will be leaving early tonight, with full pay." "Of course, sir." Right away, Marcus practically ran. "I don't understand what's happening," I said, the words tumbling out faster now, panic rising. "I came over to pour water, that's all. I should be clearing tables, not whatever this is." "This," Dante said, finally releasing my hand only to stand, buttoning his jacket in one fluid motion, "is the beginning of something inevitable." He gestured to his guards, who moved into flanking position immediately. Then he looked down at me, something dark and possessive flickering in those coal-black eyes. "Come. My driver is waiting. I haven't agreed. Emma." He leaned down, close enough that I could feel his breath against my ear, smell that intoxicating combination of cologne and danger. "You can walk out with me, safe and fed. Or you can take that bus alone through neighborhoods that are about to get significantly more dangerous. Your choice. But choose quickly." It wasn't really a choice at all. I stood on shaking legs, hyper-aware of how his hand settled on the small of my back, guiding me through the restaurant. Every eye in the place followed our procession. The infamous Dante Moretti and the nobody waitress. I could feel the weight of their stares, the speculation, the judgment. The night air hit me like a slap when we stepped outside. Rain had turned to mist, creating halos around street lamps. A black SUV waited at the curb, sleek and expensive, windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. Another man stood by the rear door, tall, broad-shouldered, with a scar running down his left cheek. "This is Marco," Dante said. "My head of security. He'll drive you home tonight." "And you?" The question escaped before I could stop it. Something flickered in his expression, there and gone too fast to identify. "I have business to attend to, but Emma." He caught my chin, tilting my face up to meet his gaze. The touch burned. "I'll be seeing you again. Very soon." It sounded like a promise and a threat wrapped into one. Marco opened the door, and I climbed inside, sinking into leather seats that probably cost more than my car, if I still had a car. Through the window, I watched Dante speak quietly with his other guards, his attention already shifted to whatever dangerous business called to him. Then, as if feeling my stare, he turned. Our eyes met through the glass, and he smiled. A real smile this time, transforming his face completely. It made him look younger, almost vulnerable, and somehow that was more terrifying than everything else combined. Because men like Dante Moretti didn't smile. They didn't buy dinner for struggling waitresses. They didn't promise safety while simultaneously radiating danger. And they definitely didn't look at nobody girls like me as if we were treasures they intended to possess. The SUV pulled away from the curb, and I watched Dante's figure recede into the misty night until the city swallowed him whole. My wrist still burned where he'd gripped it. My hand tingled where he'd held it. My face felt hot where he'd touched my chin. I'd walked into Aurelia that evening expecting another forgettable shift, another night of invisible service and meager tips. Instead, I'd poured water for a monster. And now, as Marco navigated through streets that grew progressively darker and more dangerous, I realized with crystal clarity that my life had just been divided into two distinct parts, before Dante Moretti and after. I had no idea which terrified me more, that I'd never see him again, or that his promise would come true. The SUV's headlights cut through the darkness like knives, and somewhere in the city behind us, I imagined those coal-black eyes still watching, still cataloging, still deciding exactly what he planned to do with the waitress who'd made the mistake of pouring his water. I never made it home that night, not in the way I'd expected anyway. Marco didn't speak during the drive. He navigated the SUV through streets I recognized, then into neighborhoods I'd never dared enter even in daylight. The silence pressed against me, heavy and suffocating, broken only by the rhythmic swish of windshield wipers clearing away mist. I should have been terrified. Every self-preservation instinct I possessed screamed that I'd made a catastrophic mistake. Instead, I felt oddly calm, cocooned in leather and tinted glass, watching the city transform from glittering downtown to industrial wasteland. "This isn't the way to my apartment," I said finally, my voice too loud in the quiet. Marco's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. "Change of plans." "What?" Ice flooded my veins. "No. Take me home, now." "Can't do that, Miss Hartley." His voice was gravel and smoke, surprisingly gentle for a man built like a concrete wall. "Boss's orders." "I don't care about your boss's orders." Panic clawed up my throat. I reached for the door handle, locked. Of course it was locked. "Let me out. Let me out right now, or I swear I'll—" "You'll what?" Marco asked, not unkindly. "Jump from a moving vehicle? Get yourself killed in a neighborhood where they'd step over your body without calling the cops?" He sighed, long and weary. "Mr. Moretti anticipated you'd react poorly. Asked me to give you this." He handed back a phone. Sleek, expensive, nothing like my cracked 5-year-old model. The screen glowed to life at my touch, showing a single unsaved number and a text message. "Don't be afraid. You're not in danger. I need to speak with you tonight, something that can't wait. Marco is bringing you somewhere safe. Trust me, Emma. Just this once." "I don't trust him," I said, but my hands had stopped shaking. "I don't know him." "No," Marco agreed. "You don't. But you should know Mr. Moretti doesn't make promises lightly. If he says you're safe, you're safe. Safer than you'd be in that apartment with a broken lock and neighbors who wouldn't hear you scream." My head snapped up. "How do you—" "We know everything, Miss Hartley." He said it matter-of-factly, without menace. "It's how we stay alive." The SUV turned down a narrow road lined with warehouses, their windows dark and empty like gouged-out eyes. My stomach clenched. This was it. This was where girls disappeared, where bodies turned up weeks later if they turned up at all. But then the warehouses gave way to a gated community I'd only seen in magazines. Massive estates hidden behind stone walls and iron gates, the kind of wealth that didn't advertise itself because it didn't need to. Marco pulled up to a gate that swung open silently at our approach, revealing a long driveway flanked by manicured gardens. The house at the end was more compound than home. Modern architecture of glass and steel, 3 stories tall, lit from within by warm golden light that spilled onto the wet driveway. It looked like something from an architectural digest, beautiful and cold and completely impersonal. Marco opened my door. I climbed out on legs that felt disconnected from my body, clutching the borrowed phone like a lifeline. Rain had started again, light and cold against my skin. "This way." He gestured toward the entrance where another guard stood, earpiece visible, hand resting casually near his hip, where I was certain a weapon waited. "Mr. Moretti is in his study." I followed because what else could I do? Run? I wouldn't make it past the gate. Scream? Who would hear me in this fortress of silence and money? The interior was exactly what I'd expected. Expensive everything, From the marble floors to the abstract art on the walls, to the crystal chandelier that probably cost more than I'd earn in a lifetime. But underneath the perfection, I noticed details that humanized the space. A book left open on the hall table, reading glasses folded beside it, a leather jacket draped over a chair. The faint scent of coffee and something sweeter, vanilla maybe. Someone lived here, really lived here, not just existed in a showroom. Marco led me up a curved staircase to the second floor, down a hallway lined with closed doors, stopping finally at one made of dark wood with brass hardware. He knocked twice, paused, then opened it. "Miss Hartley, sir." "Thank you, Marco. That'll be all." Dante's voice pulled me forward before I'd consciously decided to move. The study was smaller than I'd expected, more intimate, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves stuffed with volumes that actually looked read, a massive desk scattered with papers and laptops, a leather sofa near a fireplace where flames danced and crackled. The warmth hit me immediately, chasing away the chill from outside. He stood by the fire, still in his suit, but with the jacket removed, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle and decorated with more of that dark ink I'd glimpsed earlier. He'd loosened his tie, and something about that small concession to comfort made him seem more human, more dangerous, because humans you could relate to, could sympathize with, could be fooled by. "You came," he said, turning to face me fully. Relief flickered across his features before he locked it down. "Good." I didn't have much choice. The words came out sharper than I'd intended, fear transmuting into anger now that I stood in relative safety. "You basically kidnapped me. I gave you a ride." He moved to a sidebar, poured amber liquid into 2 glasses. "There's a difference. You had your driver bring me to your home against my will. That's kidnapping. Technically, you agreed to accept transportation." He offered me one of the glasses. When I didn't take it, he set it on the desk. "But I understand your anger. It wasn't my intention to frighten you." "Then what was your intention?" I demanded, wrapping my arms around myself. The borrowed dress suddenly felt too thin, too revealing, too everything. "Why am I here?" Dante studied me for a long moment, and I saw calculation behind those black eyes, weighing exactly how much truth to share. "Because 4 hours ago someone tried to kill me." The words hung in the air between us, impossible and perfectly believable all at once. What does that have to do with me? My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "Everything." He drained his glass in one swallow, set it down with controlled precision. "The attempt happened at Aurelia. They poisoned the wine I'd ordered. Good vintage, hard to trace. If I'd been dining with my usual associates, if I'd been distracted..." He trailed off, jaw tightening. "But I wasn't distracted. I was watching you." My heart hammered against my ribs. So I sent the wine back, ordered water instead." His gaze locked onto mine, intense enough to burn. "You brought that water, Emma. You served me. Anyone watching would have seen us together, would have seen me speak to you, touch you, feed you." Understanding crashed over me like ice water. "They think I'm important to you, yes." No hesitation, no comfort. Just brutal truth, which means you're in danger. The kind that doesn't end with a warning. Serious danger. I sank onto the sofa before my legs gave out. The leather was cool against my bare thighs, grounding me in reality, even as the world tilted sideways. This is insane. I'm nobody. I'm a waitress. I'm not part of your world. You are now. He crouched in front of me, bringing us eye level, close enough that I could see flecks of bronze in those coal-black irises. The moment we were seen together, you became a target. I won't apologize for that because I'm not sorry. But I will keep you safe. By bringing me here, by making me disappear. Hysteria bubbled up in my throat. My roommate will call the police. People will look for me. Your roommate Clara is being told you had a family emergency. Your shifts at both restaurants are covered for the next week. He said it so calmly, as if rearranging someone's entire life was something he did every Tuesday. No one is looking for you, Emma, because as far as the world knows, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. You can't do this. But even as I said it, I knew he could. He had. You can't just... Keep me here. I can, and I will, until I've eliminated the threat. His hand lifted, hovering near my face like he wanted to touch me but was holding himself back. I know this is terrifying. I know you don't understand. But I need you to trust that keeping you here, with me, is the only way to ensure you survive the next few days. Days? The word came out strangled. Maybe longer. He stood, putting distance between us, and I hated that I immediately felt colder without his proximity. My enemies are bold but not stupid. They'll wait, watch, try to figure out who you are and what you mean to me. When they realize you're nobody... Thanks, I muttered. They'll either lose interest or try to use you as bait. He continued as if I hadn't spoken. Either way, you're vulnerable. Here, you're protected. 24-hour security, food, safety, everything you need. Except freedom. Freedom. He laughed, sharp and bitter. You think you were free before tonight? Scraping by on tips, skipping meals, walking home through dangerous neighborhoods because you can't afford cab fare? That's not freedom, Emma. That's survival. And barely. The accuracy of his assessment stung worse than any insult. It was my life. My choice. And now you have different choices. He walked back to the sidebar, refilled his glass. You can stay here, safe and fed, until this blows over. Or you can leave right now, take your chances on the street, and see how long you last before my enemies, or someone else's, decide you're easy prey. That's not a choice. That's coercion. Welcome to my world. He raised his glass in a mock toast. Nothing is ever really a choice. Just varying degrees of consequence. I wanted to hate him, wanted to stand up, demand he release me, threaten legal action or police involvement or anything that would give me back some semblance of control. But exhaustion crashed over me like a wave. Not just from tonight, but from months of struggling, barely surviving, trying so desperately hard to keep my head above water, only to sink a little deeper every day. And here was this man, this dangerous, powerful, terrifying man, offering me safety, demanding I accept it whether I wanted to or not. Why do you care? I asked finally, the fight draining out of me. You don't know me. Why go through all this trouble for a waitress you met once? Dante was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, I don't know. He said it softly, almost to himself. I saw you through that screen, and something in my chest just stopped. Reset. Like my entire world had been waiting for that exact moment. He looked at me, and the vulnerability in his expression made my breath catch. I can't explain it rationally. I've built an empire on logic and calculation. But this? You? There's no logic here. Just certainty. Certainty of what? That you're mine to protect now. The possessiveness in his voice should have terrified me. Instead, it sent heat pooling low in my belly. Whether you accept it or not, whether you fight me or surrender, the outcome is the same. You belong under my protection, and I will burn down anyone who tries to take you from me. The fireplace crackled, filling the silence that followed his declaration. I should have been planning escape routes, memorizing the house layout, figuring out how to contact authorities. Instead, I found myself studying the way firelight painted shadows across his face, highlighting the sharp angles and that jagged scar through his eyebrow. I need to call my roommate, I said finally. She'll worry. Tomorrow. He set his glass down, rolled his shoulders like he carried the weight of mountains. It's late. You're exhausted. Marco will show you to your room. It has everything you need, including clothes that should fit. Sleep, Emma. We'll discuss details in the morning. Just like that? You give orders and expect me to follow? Yes. No apology, no pretense. That's exactly what I expect. He moved toward the door, but I stood, blocking his path. Up close like this, I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. He towered over me, all controlled power and barely leashed danger, and something reckless inside me decided to push. What if I refuse? What if I make this difficult? His hand came up, fingers curling under my chin, tilting my face up further. His thumb brushed across my lower lip, featherlight, setting every nerve ending on fire. Then you make it difficult, he murmured, his voice dropping to gravel. Fight me, Emma. Resist. I'll enjoy watching you try. You're insane, I breathed. But I didn't pull away. Probably. His smile was all teeth and shadows. But you're safe. And tonight, that's all that matters. He stepped around me, called for Marco, and just like that, the moment shattered. I was ushered down more hallways, up another flight of stairs, into a bedroom that looked like something from a luxury hotel. King-sized bed with Egyptian cotton sheets, attached bathroom with a tub big enough to swim in, walk-in closet stocked with clothes in exactly my size. How? I asked Marco, gesturing at the closet. Mr. Moretti is thorough, was all he said. There's food in the mini fridge if you're hungry. Don't try the windows. They're alarmed. Don't try the door after I leave. It locks automatically. Any problems, press the call button by the bed. Someone will come immediately. I'm a prisoner, I stated flatly. You're protected, Marco corrected. There's a difference. Sleep well, Miss Hartley. The door closed with a soft click. I stood alone in luxury that felt like a cage, surrounded by expensive things I'd never asked for. Safety I hadn't wanted but desperately needed. I should have been planning escape. Instead, I drew a bath, sank into water hot enough to sting, and tried to process the fact that my entire life had changed in the span of hours. Dante Moretti, crime lord, killer, monster by reputation, had decided I was his to protect. And the most terrifying part? Some small, desperate part of me was grateful. I'd been drowning for so long, struggling to keep my head above water. One bad day away from complete collapse. Now someone had thrown me a life preserver, even if that someone was exactly the kind of man I should have been running from. The water grew cold around me. I climbed out, dried off with towels softer than anything I'd ever owned, and found pajamas laid out on the bed. Silk, expensive, perfectly my size. Of course they were. I slipped between sheets that felt like clouds and stared at the ceiling, listening to the rain against windows I couldn't open. In a house I couldn't leave, under the protection of a man who'd looked at me like I was treasure worth killing for. Sleep should have been impossible, but exhaustion won, pulling me under into dreams of coal-black eyes and promises whispered in the dark. Of danger and safety wrapped so tightly together, I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. Somewhere in the house below, Dante Moretti planned his next move in whatever deadly game he played, and I was a piece on his board now, whether I'd agreed to play or not. The last thought I had before unconsciousness claimed me completely was simple and damning. I didn't want to leave. Morning light filtered through sheer curtains I didn't remember closing, painting the unfamiliar room in shades of gold and cream. For one disoriented moment, I forgot where I was. Then reality crashed back. The restaurant, Dante, the ride through rain-soaked streets to this gilded prison. I sat up, my body protesting. The silk pajamas had twisted around me during the night, and my hair hung in tangled waves down my back. The clock on the nightstand read 9:47 a.m. I'd slept nearly 12 hours, the kind of deep, dreamless sleep I hadn't experienced in months. Maybe years. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Miss Hartley? A woman's voice, accented and warm. May I come in? I pulled the sheets higher. Yes? The door opened to reveal a woman in her 50s, silver threading through dark hair pulled into a neat bun. She wore simple black pants and a white blouse, carried a tray that smelled like heaven, coffee, fresh bread, something sweet and buttery. Good morning. I'm Teresa, Mr. Moretti's housekeeper. She set the tray on the desk near the window, began opening curtains properly. Sunlight flooded the room, revealing details I'd missed in last night's exhaustion. Crown molding, hardwood floors, fresh flowers in a crystal vase. I've brought breakfast. Mr. Moretti asked that you join him in the garden when you're ready, but there's no rush. Take your time. The garden? I echoed stupidly. Yes, miss. Through the kitchen, out the back. She smiled, and the expression softened her entire face. You'll find clothes in the closet. Everything should fit. If you need anything at all, just press the call button. She left before I could formulate questions, closing the door with the same soft click as last night. I stared at the breakfast tray, fresh croissants, fruit cut into perfect pieces, coffee in a delicate china cup with real cream. My stomach growled traitorously. I ate. God help me, I devoured every bite, savoring tastes I'd denied myself for so long. The coffee was perfect, hot and strong, and exactly how I liked it. How did he know? How could he possibly know? Because he knows everything about you. A voice whispered in my head, "He's made it his business to know." The thought should have been terrifying. Instead, it sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with fear. I showered in the palatial bathroom, used products that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, and tried not to think about how good it felt to be clean and warm and full. The closet offered dozens of options. Designer labels I recognized from magazines. Everything still tagged and in my exact size. I chose jeans that fit like they'd been tailored for me, a soft cashmere sweater in deep green, and boots that were broken in enough to be comfortable, but new enough to lack any real wear. Looking at myself in the full-length mirror, I barely recognized the woman staring back. Clean, fed, dressed in clothes that actually fit, I looked almost normal. Almost like I belonged in a place like this. The illusion shattered the moment I remembered I was a prisoner here. Finding the garden proved easier than expected. The house revealed itself gradually as I descended stairs and wandered hallways, more lived in than I'd thought, with personal touches scattered throughout. Photographs in simple frames showing a younger Dante with people who shared his dark features. A woman's laugh echoing from somewhere deeper in the house, the smell of something baking. The kitchen was massive, all stainless steel and marble, where Teresa worked at the stove. She smiled when she saw me, gestured toward French doors that stood open to the morning air. "He's just outside, miss. Been waiting since 7. Waiting. For me." The thought made my pulse quicken in ways I refused to examine. The garden was nothing like I'd expected from a crime lord's home. No severe geometrical hedges or imposing statuary. Instead, it sprawled in organized chaos, rose bushes heavy with blooms despite the late season, a small fountain gurgling peacefully, stone pathways winding between flower beds. And at the center, a wrought iron table where Dante sat with a laptop, coffee cup, and several phones arranged within easy reach. He looked up at my approach, and I watched something in his expression shift. Calculation to something warmer, though no less intense. "Emma, you slept well?" He stood, pulled out a chair. Always the gentleman, even while holding me captive. Surprisingly, I sat because standing felt confrontational, and I needed to choose my battles carefully. "Nice prison you've got here. Guest quarters," he corrected, but amusement flickered in his eyes. "There's a difference. Guests can leave. So can you. In time." He settled back into his seat, studying me with that unnerving intensity. "You look better. Healthier. One night of actual sleep and real food will do that." I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. "Must be nice. Being able to afford basic necessities. It is. No apology, no false modesty. Which is why I intend to ensure you never lack them again. I don't need a savior. No," he agreed. "You need protection. There's a difference." He pushed one of the phones toward me. "Your roommate called 3 times this morning. I think you should speak with her." I grabbed the phone like a lifeline, Clara's name glowing on the screen. My finger hovered over the call button, then stopped. "You're listening, aren't you? To whatever I say?" "Yes.